Hello, in this video I'm just going to briefly explain the recurring transaction agreement, just to show you sort of what it is and how it works. So recurring transactions, I like to think of just, it's like a standing order. So really what it's doing is repeating transactions for you on whatever settings you want it to be. So the main thing to know about recurring transactions, where people often fail with them, is an initial transaction always has to be taken from the card that you want to have the recurring transaction agreement on, so that the payment sort of link is established. So you've got to take one payment to start the recurring agreement. So then once you've done that, so let's say you want to take a payment for £10 every month for your customer for the next from your customer for the next 3 months. So you take the first month one, you take the £10, and then you go through to create and modify a recurring agreement. So either say you had one last year with them and you wanted to set that up again, you could put that in here, RT agreement lookup, because you'll get a an agreement ID, name or policy reference for the recurring transaction agreement that you can search it by later. So you could put that in here, find agreement, and it would repeat the details for you. So you can see here, that's the agreement name. So if you had that from an old one, chuck that in there and it would repeat details for you. Otherwise, what you need, say you've just done that first £10 transaction, you want to start this recurring agreement now for the next 3 months. So initial transaction, you need to have this done so that, because this is required, you can see that here, required. So the cross-reference is needed. So remember on I'll just go back and show you just in case you haven't seen other videos. So on a transaction, you always get a unique cross-reference. So here we go, cross-reference, right there, nice long string of numbers and letters. So you'd copy that from the initial transaction, you go through onto your RT agreements tab, back to the good old create, modify, recurring agreement button, and you would pop that unique reference from the cross-reference in there, just paste it in, and then it will find the card details. So you can see here, these are fixed, you can't put them in afterwards, can't do this without an initial transaction, can't stress that enough. So you put it in there and it will repeat everything for you. So you also want to put a unique reference. So either your customer name, I think is usually the best thing to put on there, or say the product, if that's how you're working. But it's up to you, but it is required. So on this one, rather than the red stars, which you look at from the on the virtual terminal, to find what's required here, it's going to spell it out for you. It's going to say required there. Optional, that's more if it's optional. So next bit on the recurring agreement to know about. It's quite customizable, which is good. So you've got the payment schedule. So you can either have this variable, so you can set a few different payment schedules, for example, here. So just the dates and the amounts of each time. So if you wanted one to come out on Monday, say someone's doing part payment, they're doing £5 this week, and then they're going to do another £5 later in the week, you could just put these on here. Let's try one. So we're going to do £1 taken today. And then next week we're going to take £2, add that in there, example, see all that there. And it's taking it from the card details that you're putting in from that initial transaction. So they're always going to be taken off of the card. It would just take off those amounts. So let's go back to the fixed payment schedule, because that's probably more used. So the fixed payment schedule, as I said, it's pretty customizable, but it all just depends on what you enter here. So on the fixed payment schedule, what you can set, this is quite standing order like, I think is how I compare it. So say, as we were doing that example one, so the £10 to be taken every month, we said, didn't we? And then to repeat that number of cycles, so the amount of times that it's going to repeat doing that. So we wanted it to be taken for 3 months. We've taken it one time already, so we want that transaction to repeat on a monthly basis 2 more times, so 2 more cycles. Excuse me. So the initial payment date, you can put these on, more for your own reference if you want, so the initial amount, etc. But it's going to default to the recurring amount and to the agreement start date that it takes from your initial transaction. But if you want to take a different amount, that's why. If you want to take a different amount for the initial payment, or take it on a specific date. So if you were setting up the initial payment through the recurring transaction, you could do that here. Right, so payment retries is the final thing to look at. So the system will retry the failed payments once every 15 minutes until the specified maximum amount of attempts have been made. So here's your maximum amounts. So similar to, if you've got a direct debit from your customer, and you didn't want to keep this repeating because it will then cancel the payment after an amount of times, you would have a limit on that. So it's the same here. So especially with cards, just because they're obviously quite, they're kept safe by the banks. If you wanted to only retry it a few times so it didn't freeze the transaction, you could keep that to say 3 or something like that. But yeah, it's just really to put in a max amount of retries. You can go pretty high with that, I think. You can go as high as you want, but it'll default to 4. So these are the customizing options for taking the details of the payment. Final payment details as well. So say you don't want to do it through the fixed payment schedule as to when the cycles would end, you could put this in here and it would know when to stop taking the payment. So yeah, you've got fixed payment schedule, you've got variable, you've got the requirement for the initial transaction to be taken, you've got that CREST reference, so that always has to be filled in. Yeah, so that's really the recurring agreement. And the other thing, so you want to check what recurring agreements you've got going out. You can check that on invoices. So you go to the invoices tab. And then this will tell you what payments are being taken, etc. If you've set this up with your recurring transaction details. But yeah, you can get it on there and you can download your invoice reports. Again, you can get them in pretty much any formats. You can get them in Excel, Word, get them into Xero. Again, if you've got that integrated, lots of different ways to take that.